Hey, happy Sunday. Sunday night, 6 p.m. Pacific time. And I'm here again, showing up consistently, showing up for myself and for you. Ah, it is a weekend in October. It was hot today here in LA. Gosh, it was like 90 some degrees. And I think I went out just outside a couple times, but just kept looking at my Apple Watch going, how hot is it? Oh, I think it got up to around 97. Um, And let's see what is going on in my world. I had a couple of great phone calls today. Got to teach a class today. Got to sit in on a class today. Sundays, Sunday often feels like a work day for me as opposed to a rest day. But that's it. Hey, so yesterday, one thing I did was I taught a class for TatLab, which is an online kind of portal for workshops and educations and talks started by John Kim, otherwise known as the Angry Therapist. And it was a pleasure to be in with that group of people and was was excited to be a part of it. And what I taught was a class that I had taught before with some revisions. Talked about rejection rehab. Really, I only had an hour with them, and I wanted to talk about what happens to us when we experience rejection, what happens to us physiologically, what happens to us emotionally, and how do we move through it quicker? Because rejection, unfortunately, as I shared with the class yesterday, it's like no one gets to escape it. We all are going to experience rejection on some level or another. And, some people can experience such a strong resistance to rejection that they'll do everything they can to people please, to not feel rejection, which unfortunately, what they're ultimately doing is rejecting themselves, rejecting their willingness to be able to show up exactly as they are or who they are, and instead trying to pretzel themselves and manipulate themselves into such a position that they'll be liked. And I certainly have done this at different parts of my life. Hey, Tom. And and so they'll have a tendency to self-reject, meaning they can't show up as they are with the expectation that they'll be loved, they'll be accepted, and so we pretzel ourselves into a way of being, which is just another form of rejection, right? We reject ourselves before other people will reject us. So, Tom, some of this is going to sound familiar to you because I was just going to talk about a little bit of what we talked about in the Tat Lab class yesterday, and that is the research behind rejection. And I find this interesting because, how do you research rejection? I always find the process of researching any kind of emotional state or how humanness we are, like how do we get people into that state so that we can research what's really happening for them. So they would put people into an fMRI machine and have them experience rejection ex- by playing a game uh, with 3 other or 2 other players. They would not be all in the same room, but it was just a basic game of visually passing a ball to each other. And as you can imagine, with 3 people, it would get passed back and forth, passed back and forth. And but eventually what would happen is the person who's in the research machine, fMRI machine, would get left out. And the 2 other players would just keep passing the ball back and forth to each other. And so that would have that momentary sense of what's wrong? Why aren't I included? What's happening? I'm being rejected, right? Just to see what was happening in their brains. And what they found is that the same area of their brain that lights up when we experience physical pain lights up when we experience ostracism, social pain, or rejection. And this is different than fear or sadness or depression that's often located in our amygdala. This type of emotional, which is pain, would light up just as physical pain. And I think it's interesting how we talk about this type of pain. We often give it physical attributes, like they that breakup really tore me up, or they broke my heart, or it really hurt my feelings, right? So we give it kind of a physicality as if we talk about it that way. Um, and I like this idea. Gary Winch talks about this. Part of this I learned on the um, Happiness Lab podcast with Dr. Laurie Santos. And she had a guest named Guy Winch on there. And he talked about how, if we take into consideration that this side of our brain is lighting up, they actually did some research where they thought, well, if, what's the medication we take to soothe our physical pain? Would that help us if we had pain of rejection? And not that I am advising this at all. And in fact, everyone on the podcast and I am saying this, please don't do this. But they found like acid, Tylenol pain relievers could lessen the pain of rejection because it would go to that area of the brain and help us, just like a physical pain, help reduce the pain senses of rejection. Of course, that's not at all what I'm advising here. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not the prefrontal lobe or amygdala. It's somewhere here on the side, the temporal side here. Yes, 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 exactly, Tom. Um, so, but the interesting thing is, when we have a physical pain, we generally go and take care of it. And we'll, put a Band-Aid on it. We'll wash it out. We'll make sure the cut heals, has the opportunity to heal. We might put an ointment on it, but we tend to it. But when we have a physical pain, we don't often tend to it the same way. Uh, we actually oftentimes will create even more pain for ourselves. So, we get a cut in our hand, and, if we were to kind of map this onto what we do with our mental pain, it would be like, cut a hand, and then we take a lighter and we burn the cut. What we want to be doing is not that. We want to be doing the same thing that we would do for a physical pain, where we would, wash it, maybe put an ointment, maybe put a Band-Aid on it. And we would do it quickly, right? We wouldn't let this thing get infected or fester and get pussy. We want to address it quickly. And the same thing when we have an emotional pain of something like rejection. Like, how do we tend to it, and what does our emotional medicine cabinet look like? And so that's where we're talking about, how do we give ourselves some first aid when we experience rejection. And one of the first things that we would talk about is, how do we give ourselves, and this, you might consider this the washing out of a cut on your hand. That's usually the first thing that we would go to. Maybe the first thing we can consider doing when we have emotional pain is giving ourselves the same kind of washing out, but it is actually self-compassion. Talking to ourselves in a soothing, kind-hearted, generous way that we would for any friend who might be experiencing that same kind of pain as well. How do we talk to ourselves? Consider that the washing of the cut, of the emotional cut, and making sure that it starts clean from a very compassionate place of understanding and saying, I know this is really hard. This is a difficult time. I see you. I hear you. I'm going to be here with you. We'll get through this. Kind of talking to yourself in that way, like you were talking to your best friend. Yeah, overeating doesn't help you, right, Tom? And I've done that too. Oh my gosh, I certainly have done, everything that I speak of, I've practiced the other. So I have done the overeating, I have done the numbing, I have, watched the TV, I have done the games, I've done all the numbing things that take away the pain for a short time, but it doesn't actually heal the pain. So what we want to talk about is, how do you help yourself move through and heal the pain? So there's the self-compassion, and there's also the idea of social connection. How do we stay during this time? Because for many of us, when we feel that sense of rejection, we actually pull away even more from the very place we need to lean into. We can have a sense of self-isolation and move away from people. But what we really want to do is move towards people to help us heal. Social connection is really a big one. And if you can't get that social connection, one of the things that you can do, and Guy Winch talks about this, is creating social snacks around you. Little reminders that you are connected. Can you put pictures up in your home of the people you love, the people you have connections with? Can you, have a text chat with someone, or get on social, like have a connection like this, where you can have, just like Tom, you're doing, just having someone reach out to say, hi, I'm so glad you're here. that you are an important part of this world in this presence that you're here. So we've got self-compassion, we've got social connection, and then this one I think is a really great exercise if you're willing to take it on, and that is just remembering your own value. So in the area that you've been rejected, whether it be relationships or on the job or trying to submit to something and you don't get it, we can start down talking ourselves or ripping ourselves to shred quite easily, and which obviously doesn't help the situation. So in that, can we just make a list of all the good qualities that we bring into those situations? So if it's relationships, who are you when you're at your best in a relationship? How do you show up for other people? And make that list and then take, if you've got a list of 12, 15, 20 things, I love it. Awesome. Pick one or two of those and just write a few paragraphs and longhand that, right? Just jot it down, journal it. What does this mean to you? How do you show up? What does that look like for you? And why do you think that's important for any kind of relationship so that you can help your self-esteem and build that back up? Otherwise, what we do in rejection is we often hand over our self-esteem to someone else and let them stamp all over it, walk all over it, throw it in the trash. And we allow their opinion of us to shape our opinion of ourselves. And so this is the act and the action of actually coming back to ourselves and reminding us, wait a minute. Who am I when I'm really at my best? This rejection right here, I really don't have I don't have any knowledge as to why I'm being rejected. And we make up a lot of stories about why we're being rejected, and we ask ourselves a lot of really terrible questions. We may never know why we're really rejected. And oftentimes, as I tell my clients, it's much more of a reflection of that person than it is of you. So, how do you create your own self worth and your self value again? And part of that is just reminding yourself of that list and coming back and doing some more writing on that. Mhm. So, not unless you're in a movie, Tom. Not unless you're in a movie. Yeah. So, Tom, did you get that one? So, it's not about actually doing affirmations. In fact, what Tom Wentz, the researcher and the therapist that I'm quoting there, has often said that if we just state affirmations that we don't actually believe in, it can actually hurt us a little bit more. So, if I were to say, you know, I'm a totally beautiful person and my next relationship is going to be awesome. Well, if unless I fully believe that, that might actually take me further away from healing. But what I can do is make a list of the 10 or 12 qualities that I think I bring into a relationship. Things like really listening. I think I value people. I think I bring a good sense of humor into it. I feel like I have gratitude and appreciation. I feel like I cook. I'm spontaneous. I could list out those qualities of what I think I bring into a relationship, and then I might take 1 or 2 of those and think, humor and, spontaneity, and I might wanna write a paragraph or 2 on each one of those topics on why I think they're important, so I can help my own self-esteem and not hand that self-esteem to anyone else. There's that. I hope that helps, Tom. Well, that's it, my friends. That's our Moffat Talks Sunday night for you. So glad you are going to stop by or stopping by right now as you're watching it. It's always a pleasure. 6 p.m. Sunday night, I'm here giving you a little bit of wisdom from my life, and hopefully it can help you out too. I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you around. Bye, everybody.